Chapter 1, the low hum of the command center, was barely audible beneath the ceaseless tapping of fingers on keyboards. Captain Mara Armitage stood in front of the massive display panel, eyes scanning the data streams flashing across the screen. The room was quiet, save for the occasional crackle from the intercom and the steady rhythm of breath from the crew members around her. It was the kind of atmosphere that preceded a storm, silent, heavy with anticipation, and teetering on the edge of something explosive. "Anything?" Mara asked, her voice cutting through the stillness. Lieutenant Jace looked up from his station. He had been working tirelessly, running scans for any anomaly that could explain the increase in military activity from the Xenos Empire. His face was drawn, weary from the late hours, but his sharp, focused eyes betrayed no sign of doubt. "Nothing, Captain. Just the usual patrols. No sign of an imminent attack," Jace replied, his fingers flying over his console with practiced precision. "But there's been an unusual increase in their fleet movements." "I don't trust it." Mara nodded, folding her arms across her chest, staring at the readout that depicted the scattered movements of the Xenos ships in their quadrant of the galaxy. They had been on edge for weeks, ever since the Xenos first appeared on the outskirts of Earth space. Their presence had been sporadic, almost cautious, until now. "We're overdue for something," Mara said, her voice low, more to herself than to anyone else. The uneasy tension in her chest was palpable. The Xenos never acted without a purpose. They were methodical, calculating, and Earth had something they wanted. She glanced at the tactical display once more, her eyes narrowing at the fluctuating patterns. It was only a matter of time before something triggered the Xenos into action. The silence of the calm before the storm was too loud. A fleet that large didn't simply appear in Earth's sector without reason. "Captain, you need to see this." Jace's voice broke through her thoughts. Mara stepped forward, her boots echoing on the metal floor as she approached the station. The screen before them flickered, displaying a data stream that Mara instantly recognized. It wasn't a standard military transmission. It was a signal, faint but distinct, the kind of signal that didn't belong to any known system. "It's coming from Earth's lower atmosphere," Jace said, pointing to the data. "Deep underground, to be precise. The signal, it doesn't match anything we've seen before." Mara felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't one to believe in coincidences, especially when it came to the Xenos. They had been studying Earth for decades, cataloging its weaknesses and unknowns. But this was different. The signal was familiar, yet foreign. It reminded her of the old legends, the ones about the lost civilizations that once thrived on Earth, long before human history. "Can you trace it?" Mara asked, her mind already running through the possibilities. Jace's fingers hovered over his console, his brow furrowing as he ran a series of deep scans. "I'm trying. It's almost like it's been buried, layered beneath the surface for centuries. The energy signatures are like nothing I've ever seen." "Buried? Why now?" Mara murmured, her gaze fixed on the flickering data. There was something ancient about it, something that hadn't been active for generations, if ever. The Xenos wouldn't be interested in an old relic unless it posed a threat. Before she could voice her concerns, the alarm sounded, cutting through the quiet atmosphere like a knife. The entire ship seemed to shake as the intercom crackled to life. "Captain, incoming fleet. Multiple Xenos ships. They're coming in fast." Mara didn't need to be told twice. She turned sharply on her heel, her boots echoing through the corridor as she moved toward the bridge. Her mind raced, and she could already feel the pulse of urgency in her veins. As she stepped onto the bridge, the vast viewport stretched before her, showing the stars that had always comforted her, until now. There, just beyond the orbit of the moon, the first wave of Xenos warships appeared, cutting through the blackness like specters of war. Their sleek, heavily armed vessels were unmistakable, a terrifying display of the power the Xenos had cultivated over centuries. "Shields up! All hands to battle stations!" Mara's voice rang out, commanding and steady. The crew leapt into action, moving with practiced efficiency. The atmosphere on the bridge was suddenly electric, the calm of moments before replaced with the tension of impending combat. But Mara didn't feel fear. Not yet. She was too focused on what came next. "Captain," Jace's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The signal, it's coming from within the area the Xenos are targeting." Mara's gaze snapped back to the screen, where the Xenos ships began to move into formation. The edges of their fleet converge around Earth, blocking any escape routes. The attack wasn't just a skirmish. This was a full-scale assault. "Why now?" Mara whispered under her breath. The Xenos knew Earth wasn't a direct threat to their empire. Earth was still relatively primitive in comparison. But this signal? It meant something more. The Xenos had found something beneath Earth's surface, something that made them move now with such precision and force. "Ready the fleet for engagement," Mara barked, her voice unwavering. "Jace, get back to work on that signal. If there's something buried down there, we need to know what it is. Now." Jace nodded sharply, his fingers dancing over the console once more. "I'm on it, Captain, but I'm not sure how much longer we have. The Xenos are deploying landing forces." Mara's jaw tightened. She wasn't one to wait for an attack to come to her. Earth had always survived by being the unexpected contender, the underdog. It was time to remind the galaxy why. "Prepare for a counterstrike," she said, her voice firm. "We're not just defending Earth. We're protecting what's ours." As the battle raged outside, Mara felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. Earth had something the Xenos wanted. She didn't know what it was, but she would find out. One way or another. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. This chapter sets the stage for the tension between Earth and the Xenos, weaving in the mystery of the signal and the planet's unknown secrets. It establishes Mara's resolve and leadership while introducing the imminent threat of the Xenos Empire. Chapter 2, The Assault on Earth's Defenses, was relentless, a tidal wave of fire and metal that threatened to crush everything in its path. But amidst the chaos, Captain Mara Armitage remained focused, her mind fixated on the strange signal that had emerged from deep within the planet. She stood on the bridge of the flagship, her fingers gripping the edge of the command console as she surveyed the frantic activity around her. "Status report," Mara barked, her tone sharp as she glanced at the tactical screen. The Xenos fleet had begun their descent, splitting into multiple formations to execute a full planetary invasion. Earth's defenses were holding for now, but it was clear that this wasn't just a military strike. It was something more. "We've held off their initial bombardment, Captain, but they've deployed landing forces on the surface. The eastern and western regions are under heavy attack," Lieutenant Jace reported, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to engage them on the ground." Mara nodded, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that the Xenos weren't here to conquer Earth. Not yet, at least. There was something else, something far more dangerous, buried beneath the surface. The signal had confirmed that. But what was it? And why was the Xenos Empire so determined to uncover it? "Jace," Mara said, turning to her lieutenant, "I need you to keep analyzing that signal. It's coming from Earth's lower atmosphere, deep underground. Whatever it is, it's important." Jace's fingers flew across his console as he worked, his face a mixture of concentration and concern. "I'm running every scan I can, Captain, but there's not much I can do while the attack's underway. The signal's buried too deep, and the Xenos' interference is making it harder to trace." "Find a way," Mara said, her voice firm. She turned back to the tactical screen, where Earth's forces were scrambling to hold back the invaders. "If they're after something underground, we can't afford to lose track of it." The hours passed in a blur of activity. Mara moved between the bridge and the command center, coordinating the defense and monitoring the status of the signal. The Xenos were relentless, launching wave after wave of attacks, but Earth's military had begun to adapt. Mara had always believed in Earth's resilience, in the ingenuity and courage of its people. But even she knew that this wasn't a battle they could win with brute force alone. Late in the evening, as the sky above Earth darkened with the glow of distant explosions, Jace finally returned to her with an answer. "I've got something," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and wariness. The signal, it's coming from an old, abandoned facility. One that's not on any of the official records. Mara's brow furrowed. A hidden facility? What kind of facility? Based on the scans, it looks like it's a pre-galactic war structure. Not from Earth's history. Not by our standards. It's old, Captain. Very old. Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. Pre-galactic war. That phrase alone told her everything she needed to know. Earth had been part of a much larger conflict long before humanity had taken to the stars. What could remain from that era? And why hadn't anyone discovered it before? Where is it? She asked, trying to keep the urgency from her voice. Coordinates are locked. It's deep in the Arctic Circle, buried beneath miles of ice and rock. Jace replied, scrolling through the data on his screen. The facility's been sealed off for centuries, but it's still active. Whatever is inside, it's powered on. Mara thought for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on her. Prepare, team. We're going there. Jace hesitated. Captain, with all due respect, you're sending us into the heart of the Xenos invasion. We can't risk a ground operation right now. We don't have a choice, Mara countered, her voice unwavering. The Xenos are already landing forces all over the planet. If we don't find out what's hidden there, we'll never know why they're attacking Earth in the first place. The next day, Mara found herself standing at the entrance to the underground facility, surrounded by a team of EDF soldiers. The snow and ice had been cleared, leaving a stark, barren landscape in its wake. The facility loomed ahead, a dark structure half buried in the frozen earth. Its metal walls were pocked with centuries of decay, but the complex had a strangely menacing presence. It was as though it had been waiting for this moment. Mara's heart raced, but her expression remained stoic. This wasn't just another mission. This was something bigger. The Xenos were closing in on the truth, and it was up to her to find it first. Ready, Captain, Sergeant Holt called, giving her a thumbs up from the front of the group. Mara nodded, motioning for the team to move forward. They entered the facility's cold, dimly lit interior, their footsteps echoing off the metallic walls. As they moved deeper into the complex, the air grew colder, the oppressive silence almost unbearable. The walls themselves seemed to hum, a low, resonant vibration that hinted at something ancient and powerful hidden within. Any sign of the Xenos? Mara asked, her voice low but steady. Nothing yet, Holt replied, but we're not far from the main chamber. We'll be on high alert. Mara didn't respond, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She could feel the pull of the place, the weight of history pressing down on her. What had been buried here, so far from civilization? What had the Xenos found that made them willing to risk everything to get to it? They reached the central chamber after what seemed like an eternity. Inside, the walls were lined with strange, alien symbols, unlike anything Mara had ever seen before. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it was a crystalline structure, glowing faintly with an ethereal light. Mara stepped forward cautiously, her breath catching in her throat. This was it. This was the source of the signal. What is this? Holt asked, his voice filled with awe. Mara didn't answer. She simply reached out and touched the crystal. The moment her fingers brushed against its surface, the air around them shifted. A surge of energy rippled through the room, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The crystal flared to life, casting an intense light across the room. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse, as though reacting to the artifact's awakening. For a split second, Mara felt something stir deep within her, an overwhelming sense of purpose, of connection to something beyond her comprehension. And then, the facility's alarms blared, cutting through the silence like a knife. Xenos incoming! Holt shouted. We got to move now. Mara's heart pounded as she turned toward the exit, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just uncovered something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The Xenos were coming, and Earth's fate was hanging by a thread. He said. Chapter 3. The ground shook as Mara and her team sprinted through the dark, frozen corridors of the ancient facility. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the walls, the Xenos' forces already bearing down on them. The crystal, still glowing faintly in Mara's hand, pulsed with an energy that felt alive, alive in a way that made her both awed and terrified. Whatever this artifact was, it wasn't just a relic. It was something far more dangerous. We need to move faster. Sergeant Holt's voice crackled over the comms. The Xenos are close. Mara gritted her teeth, pushing her legs harder. She had no idea how much time they had before the facility was overrun, but every instinct screamed that the Xenos were already too close. The crystal's energy surged, almost as if it were calling to something or someone deep below them. "Captain, there's something here," Jace said, his voice strained as he ran beside her. "The scans, they've just picked up something massive. Whatever it is, it's moving. Moving." Mara turned to him, her breath coming in short gasps. "Where?" "Deep beneath us," Jace said, tapping away at his wrist console. "It's not just the facility. There's something buried deeper, something that's been dormant for centuries." Mara's thoughts raced. Whatever this was, the Xenos wanted it. That much was clear. But why hadn't they accessed it sooner? Why now, when Earth was already on the brink of war? "There's no time to figure it out," Mara said, her voice hard with urgency. "We need to get back to the surface. The Xenos will be here any minute." As they rounded a corner, the flickering lights of the facility overhead seemed to flicker and die. The air grew colder, and the facility's low hum turned into an ominous vibration beneath their feet. Mara's heart pounded in her chest as she realized that whatever they had unleashed in the chamber had triggered the entire structure to come alive, and now it was fighting back. Ahead of them, the tunnel split into two paths. Mara's mind raced. There was no time to hesitate. Left or right? Holt called out, his voice tight with stress. "Right," Mara ordered, not even hesitating. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing in on her, and there was no room for second-guessing. The right path led directly to the surface. They ran for what seemed like miles, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the abandoned halls. The walls closed in, making the air feel thick, as though the facility itself were holding its breath. Mara glanced back over her shoulder, her thoughts darkening. The crystal in her hand had begun to hum louder, vibrating against her palm, as if it were somehow aware of the Xenos' approach. Suddenly, a sharp crackling noise echoed through the tunnels. The sound of footsteps, no, boots, heavily hitting the floor, coming from all directions. Xenos soldiers. The invasion had begun. "Get ready," Mara hissed under her breath, signaling for the team to take cover behind a steel pillar. She crouched low, the pulse of the crystal in her hand matching the pounding of her heart. The sound of Xenos soldiers was getting closer. She could hear their guttural voices through the walls, their alien language unmistakable. Mara's mind raced. They couldn't fight them off here, not with the crystal. They needed to reach the surface, and fast. "Team move," Mara barked. "We have to clear the exit before they trap us down here." Without a word, Holt and the others sprang into motion. They moved quickly, silently, like shadows in the darkness, prepared for the chaos that was about to unfold. They reached the surface doors, massive metal gates that led out into the cold, desolate wasteland outside. But as they approached, a harsh, shrill screech filled the air, freezing them in place. The ground cracked open beneath them, a violent tremor shaking the facility's foundation. The walls of the tunnel splintered, and a massive, dark shape emerged from the earth itself. Something ancient, something monstrous, something that Mara had never seen before. Its form was indistinct, shrouded in shadows, but its presence was undeniable. It was alive, and it was hungry. The crystal in Mara's hand pulsed furiously, sending waves of energy into the ground beneath them, reacting to the entity emerging from the depths. The air around them hummed with an intensity that made her skin prickle, the entire facility vibrating in resonance with the creature. "Captain!" Holt shouted, his voice a mixture of panic and disbelief. "What the hell is that?" Mara's eyes widened as the creature's form took shape. It was massive, a swirling mass of darkness and energy, with tendrils of raw power lashing out from its core. She could feel the power of the crystal responding to it, amplifying the entity's energy. "This isn't good," Jace muttered, his eyes wide with fear. That thing's not just from Earth. It's something else. Get to the surface, Mara ordered, her voice trembling with urgency. Now, we need to get out of here before it kills us all. But before they could move, the creature lashed out, sending a shockwave of energy that knocked them off their feet. The walls buckled, and the ground split beneath them. Mara gritted her teeth as she regained her footing, her hand clutching the crystal tighter as the room around her spun. It wasn't enough to hold it back. "Captain, we can't outrun this," Holt shouted, his voice strained as he struggled to stand. Mara's mind raced. She had to make a choice. The crystal was their only chance. She could feel it. Its energy was growing stronger, and the creature was feeding off it. If she didn't act now, they'd all be trapped in this place forever. "Jace, I need you to make it stop," Mara said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Can you disable the crystal's energy surge?" Jace's eyes darted to the crystal in her hand, his face pale with fear. I don't know. This is beyond anything I've ever seen before. But I'll try." As Jace worked frantically to access the crystal's core, Mara turned her focus to the creature. She couldn't let it escape, couldn't let it reach the surface where the Xenos would be waiting. She had to stop it now. With a sudden surge of will, Mara reached out to the crystal, willing it to contain the energy that was flooding the room. She wasn't sure how she was doing it, but the crystal obeyed. The energy constricted around her, and the entity shrieked in frustration, its tendrils recoiling. For a moment, there was silence. Then Jace spoke. "It's working, Captain." The energy subsiding. "We bought some time." Mara breathed a sigh of relief, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Xenos were closing in. They needed to get out now. "Let's move," Mara said, her voice hard with determination. The battle was far from over. Chapter for the roar of gunfire echoed across the barren tundra as Mara and her team sprinted toward the surface, the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders. Behind them, the ancient facility groaned and shifted, as though the very earth was rejecting their presence. The Xenos were closing in, their forces advancing with terrifying precision. Earth was under siege, and Mara knew they couldn't outrun the inevitable much longer. "We're almost there," Holt shouted, his voice strained as he pushed ahead, the cold wind biting at his face. Mara's pulse raced, but her thoughts were focused on one thing: the crystal. The energy it had released was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It had awoken something inside the earth, something old and powerful. The artifact had already responded to the Xenos' presence, and Mara had no idea if they could control it. But they had no choice now. "Get to the ship," Mara ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to warn Earth. The Xenos know what we're dealing with." The team pushed harder, their legs burning with fatigue. The storm had picked up, snow swirling in the air as they finally reached the drop zone where their extraction ship was waiting. The sleek craft hovered low, its engines humming with power. "Go, go, go," Holt urged, motioning for the others to climb aboard. Mara didn't hesitate, her boots slamming against the metal ramp as she entered the ship. She glanced over her shoulder one last time before the ramp sealed behind them. "Captain, we're clear," the pilot said, his voice calm but tense. "Heading to the surface now." Mara took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. The mission had been a success, if you could call it that. They had uncovered the artifact, but at what cost? The Xenos were here. They knew what Earth was hiding. And worse, they had awakened something deep beneath the planet's surface, something that could change everything. As the ship ascended through the atmosphere, Mara stood at the rear, staring out into the swirling chaos below. The Xenos' fleet still hovered above Earth, their ships like vultures waiting for their prey to fall. But Earth wasn't going down without a fight. She could feel it. Something had shifted. "Captain, we've got company." Jace's voice broke through her thoughts. Mara turned, her eyes narrowing. On the tactical display, a new signature blinked into view: Xenos ships, but not the usual warships. These were different, smaller, faster, and packing more firepower. They were headed directly for Earth's orbit. "Damn it," Mara muttered. "They're launching a strike on Earth." We need to get back and warn Command. Can't you feel it? Jace said, his voice softer now. There's something else going on here. The energy from the artifact, it's not just the Xenos. It's as if Earth itself is reacting. Mara didn't have time to process his words. She snapped back into action, speaking to the pilot. Turn us around. We're going back to Earth. Fast. As the ship veered back toward the planet, Mara's mind raced. The crystal's power had begun to resonate with Earth's natural energy, and something was changing, something beyond their control. Could this power be the key to repelling the Xenos? Or was it a threat that could destroy everything they'd worked to protect? Hours later, Earth's surface came into view. The ship touched down on the outskirts of the capital, where the battlefield stretched out before them. Smoke billowed into the air from the wreckage of countless ships, both Earth's and the Xenos. The situation had worsened, but the sight that greeted them was almost surreal. The city itself was holding. Against all odds, Earth's forces had managed to push the Xenos back, their defenses stronger than anyone had anticipated. The pulse of the energy beneath the planet's surface had sparked something in Earth's military, something that had given them the strength to stand their ground. As the ship descended to the landing zone, Mara saw the chaos firsthand. Xenos soldiers stormed the streets, clashing with Earth's defenders in brutal, close-quarters combat. But above it all, Earth's forces were fighting back with a renewed vigor, fueled not just by their desperation, but by the strange power that had emerged from the artifact. Mara, Jace said, his voice steady but with a hint of awe. Look at this. Mara turned, following his gaze. Across the horizon, Earth's military installations had begun to glow with the same energy they had felt deep underground. The crystal's power was spilling over, flooding the planet's defenses with strength they had never known before. The city's once silent energy grid was now alive, crackling with power. Massive energy cannons mounted on the outskirts of the city powered up, firing concentrated beams of energy that cut through the Xenos ships like a hot knife through butter. Their once unimaginable firepower was now a match for the Xenos' most advanced technology. We've got a fighting chance, Mara whispered, barely believing what she was seeing. The ground around them trembled, a deep, resonant rumble that shook the air. Mara's eyes widened as the ground split open in the distance, and massive structures began to rise from the earth itself. Ancient, alien designs that were eerily similar to the artifacts they had uncovered in the facility. The energy from the crystal was awakening Earth's dormant defenses, and with them came a new breed of weaponry, born of the planet itself. Captain, Jace said, his voice filled with a strange mix of wonder and fear. This is it. Earth's been hiding this power for centuries. Mara nodded, her mind racing. The Xenos had thought they could crush Earth, but they had underestimated the planet's resilience and its hidden strength. This was no ordinary battle. This was a war for the survival of Earth and the galaxy. We need to take control of this power, Mara said, her voice hardening with resolve. This is the key to winning. As the battle raged on, Earth's forces began to push the Xenos back, the tide of war shifting in their favor. Mara's orders were clear. Defend Earth, control the power of the artifact, and hold the line until the full strength of their newfound energy could be unleashed. In the command center, Mara stood at the front, directing the fight as waves of Xenos forces continued to advance. But now, Earth's soldiers fought with something they had never had before: confidence. The crystal's energy had connected them to something larger than themselves, something ancient and primal. Captain, Lieutenant Jace said, breaking her concentration, the Xenos are retreating. They're pulling back to their ships. Mara watched the tactical display as the Xenos' fleet began to withdraw from Earth's atmosphere, their ships slowly retreating. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like Earth had the upper hand. They're not done yet, Mara said, narrowing her eyes. This isn't over, but we've made our point. The Xenos had underestimated Earth's power, but now, Earth had a new weapon, a weapon that had been buried beneath their feet, hidden from the galaxy for centuries. The balance of power had shifted, and Mara knew one thing for sure: Earth's future had just begun. The war for the galaxy's survival had entered a new phase, and Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. It was a force to be reckoned with. Chapter 5, The Silence, was almost more unnerving than the battle. The roar of combat had subsided, the Xenos fleet retreating from Earth's orbit. But Mara Armitage stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, staring out at the stars, her mind still racing from the chaos that had unfolded. Earth had survived, but at what cost? The war was far from over. We did it. Jace's voice cut through her thoughts, though he didn't sound as certain as his words suggested. We've pushed them back. For now. For now, Mara repeated, her tone flat. But they'll return. They always do. Maybe, Jace replied. But we're not the same as we were yesterday, Mara. We got something they don't. Earth's power. Mara turned to face him, her expression unreadable. The energy from a crystal was still pulsing deep within Earth's core, and with it, their weapons systems had been enhanced beyond comprehension. The Xenos had tried to wipe them out, but they hadn't counted on Earth's hidden strength, its dormant power now awakened. Have you had any luck making sense of the artifact? Mara asked, her gaze still fixed on the tactical readout before her. Jace shook his head. Not yet. There's so much about it we don't understand. The way it draws energy from the planet itself. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's as though Earth was always meant to hold this power. Then we need to learn how to control it. Because next time, they won't hesitate. Her voice was steel. We've seen what they can do. We're not prepared for another attack like this. If we don't harness this power fully, we might not get another chance. The rest of the bridge crew remained silent, each of them understanding the gravity of her words. Earth's defense had shifted from desperate resistance to something far more dangerous, and they were all too aware that the galaxy's most advanced species would return with a vengeance. Hours later, the situation had calmed enough for Mara to leave the bridge. She stood before the massive windows of the observation deck, gazing at the Earth below. The planet was scarred, battered, but it was still alive. The Xenos had thought they could crush it, and for a time, it seemed they would. But the heart of Earth had been awakened, and with it, humanity's ability to fight back. Captain, Lieutenant Holt said as he approached, his voice steady but tinged with concern. There's something you need to see. The energy readings are off the charts. Mara's brow furrowed. What do you mean off the charts? It's Earth itself. The artifact's energy output, it's growing exponentially. It's expanding beyond the power grids, beyond the military zones. We don't know where it's going, but it's spreading. Mara didn't hesitate. Show me. They made their way to the central command room, where the display showed Earth's energy grid mapped across the globe. Red indicators blinked rapidly as new energy sources began to form, scattered across the surface like veins of molten fire coursing beneath the planet's crust. I don't understand, Holt muttered. How is it doing this? We thought the energy would be contained. But it's out of control, Mara finished for him. We knew this wasn't going to be easy to manage. The Xenos didn't just come for Earth. They came because they knew this would happen. And they're not done. Not by a long shot. As the days passed, the situation only grew more urgent. The Xenos had retreated for the time being, but their strategy was clear. They would regroup, rebuild, and return. Earth was now a target more than ever before. The power they had awakened could be humanity's greatest weapon, or its greatest curse. Mara spent hours each day in the command center, monitoring the spread of the energy and working with Earth's best minds to develop new technologies to control it. But they were all in the dark. The artifact was more than just a weapon. It was a force of nature, one that responded to Earth's own pulse, its own life force. We've never seen anything like this, Jay said one evening as they pored over data. The artifact's energy signature keeps fluctuating. It's as though it's adapting, learning. Whatever was buried here before, it's not just technology. It's living. Mara sat back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her. And what does that mean for us? Jace hesitated. It means we're dealing with something far beyond our comprehension. Whatever the Xenos are afraid of, it's not just Earth's military. It's something buried in the planet's history. We've only scratched the surface. Mara's gaze hardened. then we need to dig deeper. Meanwhile, as Earth's military prepared for the inevitable return of the Xenos, the power from the artifact continued to grow. Entire regions of the planet were now infused with the crystal's energy, and strange phenomena were becoming commonplace. Earth's skies shimmered with unnatural auroras. The ground pulsated with waves of energy and new technology, seemingly inspired by the ancient civilization buried beneath the planet, was emerging from the ruins. But it wasn't just the energy that was changing Earth. People were changing too. In the capital, civilians who had once been powerless to the threats from the stars now found themselves drawn to the energy, a connection they could not explain. Scientists, soldiers, and even civilians who had never held a weapon in their lives felt something stir within them, an awakening that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "They're coming back," Mara said one evening as she addressed Earth's leaders. She stood in front of a holographic map, detailing the incoming Xenos forces. The Xenos aren't just after the power we've uncovered. They're afraid of what we've become. They're afraid of what Earth can do with this energy. "And what is it that we're becoming?" a member of the council asked. Mara paused. She had no clear answer, only the gnawing certainty that whatever they were becoming, it wasn't just humanity, it was something more. "We're becoming a force of nature," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "And when the Xenos return, we'll show them what Earth is truly capable of." As the days turned into weeks, Earth's forces began to consolidate their new power. The energy that had once been a mystery was now a driving force of their military strength, and Earth's weapon systems had become far more advanced than they had ever imagined. The Xenos, unaware of the full extent of the transformation happening on Earth, continued to regroup in the farthest reaches of space. But Mara knew that the coming battle would not just be fought with weapons. It would be fought with the very power of the planet itself. As she stood once more on the observation deck, looking out at Earth, she felt something shift within her. The war was far from over, but Earth's future was now in their hands. The galaxy would never be the same. "Captain," Jace's voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to face him. "We're ready. The next phase is about to begin." Mara nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Then let's make sure the galaxy remembers who we are." For the first time in years, Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a force that could no longer be ignored. And when the Xenos returned, they would discover just how much had changed.